Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 152. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me this week and every week. Today, I have a very special guest, Mia LaMotte. She is the founder and CEO of LaMotte International, which is a full-service image consulting and personal brand coaching firm. She helps others be seen the way they want to be seen. She does this by helping people strategically communicate their story through what they wear, how they communicate, and how they show up. She is originally from Louisiana and now lives in North Carolina with her partner Sanford and their 3 fur babies. And she is not only a certified image consultant, she is also a certified transformational coach. She is amazing. We met through a mutual client, and I cannot wait to really dig into this conversation today. Mia, welcome to Hustle and Flow.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
All right. So I want to dig in a little bit off the bat with your history because I love your story, which is that in high school, you went to a beauty academy.
I did.
Then you graduated and went to modeling school.
Yep.
And then decided it was time for a real job. So then you went and got your college degree as well as a Master of Public Administration and was working in the judicial system before it all came around. Tell us that story, how you started in beauty and modeling, went for the real job, in quotation marks, and then brought it all together with the company that you have now.
Oh, that's a great question. So I grew up in a really small town, and my family, they were business people, they were entrepreneurs, but there was always this struggle when it came to business. And so it was always put into me like, you need to go to school, you need to get a real job with benefits and those kinds of things. And that's exactly what I did. So in college, I was working for a judge, and she would come home every night and she'd have work to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you worked so hard to get to where you are, to work this hard even when you get home. So it didn't make any sense to me. But it did fascinate me in the world of judicial administration, because I was like, there's some kind of disconnect. So I was intrigued by that. And, she offered me a position, and, the rest was history when it came to that. And I worked with juveniles, and I also worked in family court. And those were some really heartbreaking stories. And in administration, I wasn't really touching people and changing their lives in that way. It was more on the administrative side, and I wanted to be able to contribute a whole lot more. So that's sort of how I got to doing the transformational piece, because I did it for myself first. And then I was like, okay, I need to do this for a living.
How did you decide, though, to combine the personal and professional development with the fashion and the beauty and the branding?
Well, good question. I asked myself, what would I do for free? It was in a transformational training that it actually came to me to even ask that question. I was with my cousin, and we were with Tony Robbins. So I got to walk on the hot coals, and I got to do all that really fun stuff that got me super pumped up. And, he asked the question. He actually gave me permission to dream, and to dream in a way that I had never been given permission before. Or I dreamed it and didn't really think I can have it happen.
Yeah.
And so that was actually probably 10 years before I even took the dive to do this company full time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It planted the seed.
It absolutely planted the seed. And I did the work part-time, and it came to a point where I was just like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. I'm not getting any younger. And I was like, I just got to do it, and I'm going to do it now. So that's what got us to today.
And, I love what you're doing with your company, because you are working with companies, corporations, right? And helping their executives and their employees understand the brand and present themselves in a way that is consistent with that brand. But you also work with entrepreneurs and professionals because they all have personal brands as well, which ties into their larger corporate brand, especially if they work with someone. I just find it so fascinating how you've combined all of those aspects. Do you find that working with the professionals versus the entrepreneurs versus, the executives in large corporations, like, does everybody show up the same or is it a little bit different?
Oh, I think it's a lot different. Most people who work for other corporations think that they have to fit into a box that actually looks like the corporate box. Mm-hmm. And what I really try to get my clients, even the corporate people who hire me, is to understand that I really don't put people in a box. I let people be who they are. And we want people to feel empowered. And sometimes that might mean changing jobs or changing companies, because what I've learned is that it doesn't help us as people to try to fit into a corporate box when our values don't align with that corporation.
And it doesn't help the corporation either.
Not at all. Not at all.
So how does it show up differently for the entrepreneurs?
Well, the entrepreneur has, their own space. So it's almost like I am the company and I'm the face of the company. Mm-hmm. But then we get into that piece of, well, if I want to get a certain kind of client, then I need to show up in a certain kind of way. And what I've done is said, I've said to all of my clients before, like, you are your best ideal client. And if you show up as the person that you truly are, and it takes a while for us to get there, because I feel like, especially with women, I feel like we have been told for so long how to be in the world that some of us have forgotten how to be ourselves. And I really encourage my clients to dig deep and really think about who they want to be and how they want to show up. And, our mutual client said to me, she's like, I really want to get this custom suit, but I want to have this element under the suit that speaks to who I really am. And I'm like, well, why do you want to do that? Like, let's just show who you are from the get-go. Let's just show the world who you are from when they first meet you. And then we'll get into how they can conform to who you are instead of you conforming to what you think you should be.
But it's so scary, right? Like, that's what we have been trained to do. I mean, both in society and in our different professions, where we are told over and over again, this is how you have to show up. Stop being so much of yourself. I think you and I talked before, and I shared, my whole life, people have told me I'm too much. And so it can be scary to show up as yourself when you fear you are too much.
Absolutely. And, I want us to show our too much-ness. I know that's not a word, but I definitely want us to show up in that way. And we can't be too much for people. And when we are, then they're not our ideal clients, especially in the entrepreneur space. I had a company reach out to me and they wanted me to groom their up and coming managers, and they couldn't promote from within. And one of the problems that she stated was that they don't dress professionally. I asked, well, what kind of money do they make? And she's like, well, honestly, they really don't get paid enough to do that. A lot of them go to Goodwill or to Dress for Success or something like that. And it's hard for them to come up and show up that way. And I was like, well, it sounds like you guys have solved your own problem, right? We have to invest in people, but we also have to take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. That if we're not paying them enough or we're not investing in them enough, they're not going to want to invest themselves into the company. It didn't align with me that they wanted me to actually change these people and how they showed up. I am a huge proponent for telling people what these rules are of image, because I didn't even know what they were. I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I didn't know that, you should wear certain colors or that you should wear certain shapes for your body type. And knowing these things actually empowered me and made me, feel better about myself. And then I just brought that to my clients. And so I love to teach them the rules, but by no means am I telling them to follow them every single time they get dressed.
Yeah. And I suspect, I know what you're going to say, but I feel like the more that we show up as ourselves, the more likely we are to stand out. Like we are in, like the market, I don't care what industry you are in, it's so crowded that if you just look to your competition or what's the industry standard and you keep showing up that way, it's really hard for people to even notice you.
Absolutely. Because everybody wants to look like that person that they want to emulate, right? And if you're in that same space, it's like, oh, this person's doing such and such, I should probably do this. Or this person's doing such and such, I should probably do this. But once you honor who you are and come from that place, that's when you actually stand out. You know, the mutual client that we have, she was like, you were the only person that was coming from a place of authenticity when you talked about image and when you talked about personal brand. That was why I wanted to work with you. And that's exactly the reason why she, you know, continues to sign up again and again. And the other thing that we talked about was her actual DNA. And I know there are a lot of other image consultants who aren't doing this work. We look at where she came from, where her ancestors came from, and we use some of those elements in her personal brand.
Mm. And is that to enhance her image or to enhance her feeling of empowerment?
It's for both. So when we look at our history and our DNA and our heritage, a lot of that plays into the way we look. And those things, those elements look good on us. So let's just say, for instance, like most of my background is French. And, you know, for a really long time, I decided that I was going to go more of I've always dressed more in a European kind of way. And I'm also African American. And so people were a little confused, like, what's going on here? And so was I, because I was like, why don't I like certain elements of African dress? And it wasn't until I started digging into, you know, my ancestry, I was like, oh, this is why I'm attracted to this French stuff. Oh, this is why I prefer to wear this kind of thing instead of that kind of thing. And once I understood that, I didn't make myself wrong for not wanting to do something else.
I love it. That's so interesting. All right. So clearly, image consulting is a little bit different, although it totally goes together with personal branding. How do you see them as different? But I think most people understand image, but I think sometimes people get confused as to personal branding.
Right. Well, for me, personal branding is all about your appearance, which is what I think people think image is. But image is way bigger than that. Image is about appearance, behavior, communication. So the way you talk to people, your etiquette, how you behave in meetings, all of that is part of your image. And a personal brand adds on the digital presence, and it adds on your mindset. So when I work with my clients, we're working on all 5 of those elements. We're working on mindset. We're working on how you look. We're working on how you show up and how you actually communicate with people, and then how you show up online. All of those things encompass personal brand. And if there's one element off in, let's just say, your appearance, you come across as somebody who's really, really smart, you write well, and you speak well, but when people see you, there's a disconnect. And that's where I help people make little tweaks, because I think that it's really important for us to have congruency across each part of all of this.
And when there's not congruency, is it that there's just a lack of awareness, or they've just never really like paid attention to it or put intention behind it? Or do you see other patterns?
I think it's a combination of both. So it could be that they didn't even think about it. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know when I was starting my business, right? I thought if I created a website and I had a really cool name and it made sense to me that I was going to have business. Well, hello. It did not mean that at all, right? I didn't have my messaging down. I didn't know who my ideal client was. I didn't really know, when I first started my business, I didn't really know who I was and who I really wanted to work with. I just knew I had this new skill of an image consultant, and I wanted to provide that service to other women, right? That's all I knew.
Yep.
And, let me put up a pretty logo and let me make sure that this logo makes sense for me. And it didn't really work. It didn't work for me and it didn't work for the people who I was trying to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's, people don't know what they don't know. And it's more about education and consulting. So letting them know what it means to be a personal brand, because we're all personal brands.
Right.
Only all the time. In this day and age, there's not really a personal life and a professional life. Everything is on display. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind, right? And so that's why, and I think that you're right by asking that question, that we absolutely need to make sure that we're congruent across all parts of this, because that's when people are really attracted to us.
Mm. You guys, great news. The 2020 planners, project pad, and bookmarks are finally here. More than a typical planner, it is a complete planning system that will revolutionize the way you approach your days, weeks, months, and years. It will help you achieve your biggest goals and work on that to-do list so that you can take back your day and focus on what matters most. Get yours now at lifeandlawplanner.com. It's so interesting. So in my business development workshop that I do, there's one element on branding, and it's from a very high level point of view, but it really is, how you see yourself, how people see you. And without fail, people will always say, yes, but I should be over here, right? Like, because what we do, right, there's different options and you get in a bucket. And again, it's not specifically you, but it's a high level. It's an assessment that they do. And they're like, yes, but for who I'm wanting to serve, I need to be over here. And I think sometimes we fail to see that we're attracted to a million different kinds of brands, regardless of ours. And when we can own it and just be authentic and truly be able to tell that story, and people see us and they associate things with us, that's really when the magic happens. And people don't even know why they're attracted to you. They just know that it feels good, right? Like, they don't have to be like you to be attracted to you.
Absolutely. It's usually who they aspire to be. I'm typically attracted to people who I aspire to be. And that's what I want for my brand. And that's why I think it's important for us to really think about who we aspire to be, right? Because when I think about my aspirations, that's how I want to show up every day. I don't want to show up as, the me who might not be feeling so hot today. So I might not want to put the effort forth to put on some clothes and stay in my yoga pants, even though there are some days that is perfectly fine, right? Mm-hmm. There are the days where I'm like, you know what? I want to show up for my audience, because if I don't push through to show up for them, then how am I going to teach them to do the same for themselves?
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Like dressing for yourself and your audience. It sounds a bit like Tony Robbins, but this is the coaching part, right? This is what I love. This is the coaching part. So as a coach who's working with a lot of different people as they're trying to figure out their personal brand and try to even figure out who they are, what they want, what does authenticity look like for them? What do you see as the number one block? I'm assuming it's mindset. But within that, what's the block that you find holds most people back, with their personal brand?
I'm going to say the first one is self-acceptance and self-love.
Oh,
yeah. And it's part of my journey. We coach how we show up in the world. At least that's been my experience. When my clients get on the phone, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm one step ahead of you, or I'm 10 steps ahead of you in this very same issue. Right. And, it's about the self-love and the self-acceptance. I grew up in a small town. Everybody looked like me. And when I went to school is when things changed. And so I had pretty much 20 years of my life, a really hard time of knowing where I fit into the world, because I was always different from the population where I was. So be it grade school, be it college, I was always different because of my ethnic background. And it wasn't until I became an adult and started working that I was able to accept myself for who I am. And that's when the self-love started. And that's when me wanting to be the best version of myself came to be. but it had to start with the self-acceptance and self-love.
So you and I have personally talked about this. Everything I do, I start with mindset, and I think you do too. But it is more than just mindset. It really is, because we talked about this, that you lead with spirituality. It's being connected to yourself, right? To a higher power in a different, right? Like whatever that means for you, but in a way that really allows you to show up as yourself. If those listening, right, are interested in, they're like, this all sounds great. I would love to accept myself more and be more authentic. How do I even start this process? Like, do you have a tip on like, what's the way to get started on the journey of having that shift so that you're even open to being honest about what your personal brand might be?
Right. I think I would say that the first thing would be, or the tip would be, like, get a set of daily practices. For me, it had to be meditation. It had to be moving my body. So for some people, it might be yoga. For some people, it might be running. The other thing that I do every single day is I read something that is going to give me a higher vibration, or that's going to bring me into a better version of myself, because I can get stuck in, the monotony of every day. And, when you get told no, or when you are having a hard day, or people around you are having a bad day, and all of those attitudes kind of get into your head, it's hard to stay focused and to stay positive. Mm-hmm. So reading for me helps me with that. I listen to audiobooks every time I get into the car. So there's always that. And then affirmations, like I have to see myself, and I have to do, like the visualization, but also affirming that whatever it is that I'm up to for the day, for my brand, like that's going to actually happen. I don't know the how. I don't get into the how. I just know that it's going to happen, and I go for it. Mm. That's the best way to connect because of the meditation, right? That's the best way to connect, but it's also the best way to show yourself that you can be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I have a daily meditation practice too. And meditation is totally what shifted everything for me as well. So for those of you listening, who don't yet have a meditation practice, I think we have some episodes on that. You might want to consider it. It really is remarkable how it can shift your perspective. I love visualizations. So I want to talk more about this because I think visualizations can be so powerful in keeping you focused on what you really want in your life. But as I'm sitting here, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, I wonder how that comes into play from a personal branding and image perspective as well. I had never really thought of that, like how you see yourself, right? Like, so if you're imagining your day, or you're imagining a big goal or a life that you want, really being able to see how you look and how you are holding yourself, right? How you're communicating. Do you do all of that? Like, you really consider all of that in your mind?
Absolutely. And you have to, because if you don't, you'll see yourself in another kind of way. So I'm just going to use myself as an example. There was this house that I wanted to have, and I drove by this house just about every day. I imagined what it would be like to come home from work and drive to this house. I imagined what it would be like to go to what grocery stores, what gyms, what dry cleaner, what would I do if I lived here? Like, where would I walk? All of those things. And that actually helped me to solidify what it was that was going to happen for me if I lived in this house. And I do the same visualization. I tell this story to my clients because I want them to understand that you can do the same thing with your brand and how you want to show up. So let's just say you love designer clothes, but you've never had them because you couldn't afford them for some reason.
Yeah.
If you can never see yourself in them, you'll never be able to wear them. You'll never have them, right?
Right.
So if you can't see yourself in that nicer house or in that nicer car, or having the kind of brand that's going to bring in the kind of clients that you want, that stuff is never going to show up. So I think that the visualization is really important, because once you can see yourself that way, it just happens. And it's almost like it happens overnight, and it happens magically. And, it's that whole universal thing that you and I were talking about. Just can't really explain how it happened. It just does. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I live in the house now. So
of course you do.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to share this story because, I used to come to this house and I would just like see myself living in it. Even I would come in for an open house and I was like, oh, this is where I would sit if I were going to read a book, and just really got into that. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that helped me to attain that goal, because we also do the reverse. Right? We can get into this thing where, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get that job because I had a horrible interview and I messed up this and I messed up that and I should have said this, but I didn't say that. And then the reverse happened. Mm-hmm. Right? So we do this really great exercise where I go through, like, think about something that you really, really wanted and you got it, but also think about something that you really, really wanted and you didn't get it. What were you telling yourself? What were you seeing? How did you see yourself in that scenario? And then people really get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, it's funny because I'd never really thought of it in this way. But now that you're saying that, I totally, like, anytime I'm giving a presentation or a speech, I rehearse it in my mind's eye. And it's not like I'm saying the words, but I'm visualizing the way I look on the stage and the confidence that, I have, right? And it makes me feel more comfortable. So when I get on the stage, I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. I've done this before. And it feels more comfortable. And I do that with knowing the stages I want, or the company I want. It's really just sitting with it and being able to see exactly what it looks like. Even if it doesn't end up being exactly like that, it gives me permission, I think, to believe that it is possible. And then, I can act in accordance. But what I have never done before is really what you were talking about earlier, which is almost like getting up each day and almost waking up and dressing and preparing yourself to basically go ahead and be what you see in that vision to bring it closer. Was I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. Because it's what you have to do. Because if you see yourself as a schlep and somebody who's really tired and even if you say those things to yourself, oh, I don't feel so good today, I probably should not stay in bed or whatever, or stay in my pajamas. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to work in your pajamas if that's what you're feeling for the day. But there is a psychology behind getting dressed, and people who are dressed are way more productive than people who stay in their PJs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So full disclosure, but I work from my home. And so I often will start, like, I wake up, I do my meditation, then I just start working, and then I'll look at the time and I'm like, oh, I need to actually go get ready. And I am all about productivity. So I've now got something to play with and test, because this would be really fun for me if I could be even more productive.
Absolutely.
Just by getting myself ready as opposed to just jumping straight into work.
Absolutely.
I'm going to play with this, Mia. I like
it. And we believe that, if I just roll out of bed and start getting to work, that I'm going to be more productive. But there's a study, it's called Enclothed Cognition. And they talk about people who get dressed and they wear certain kinds of jackets, how much more productive they are during the day.
Okay, this is going to be fun. I'm totally doing this. I will report back to everyone.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we're wrapping up. I'm super excited. So Mia is actually going to be on our expert roster for the 2020 experience, and actually come join us in Austin for something fun. So if you're in that, we're not ready to share what that is, but it's going to be great. For those not in the experience, which is a mistake, you should go apply. We have a 4th pod starting in April. How can people find you? Whether it's to work with you, to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to connect?
The best way to connect is to go to my website, which is Mia, M-I-A, LaMotte, LaMotte.com. And you can get an array of my services there. And then there's a form for you to reach out to me there. You can also reach me on social media. My Instagram handle is Mia LaMotte Image. And I'm also on Facebook. So I would love to connect with anybody and I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't play so much on LinkedIn, but I'm there too.
Yep.
I answer all of my emails personally right now. So
we will put all of those links in the show notes for everyone. And if you are interested in applying for the 2020 experience, or even 2021, we're already taking deposits, just go to 2020mastermindexperience.com. Mia, this has been such a pleasure. I cannot wait to continue to work with you and see what happens. This has been wonderful. And I hope everyone is really listening and wants to embrace their image, their personal brand, and just their own power and brilliance. Thank you so much for coming on, Mia. Any last parting words?
Just be yourself. Everybody else is already taken, right? And that's the person that people want to get to know. So I would love to get to know you and help you to, be the best version of yourself.
I love it.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys, we will be back next week. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.